The e-resource of this episode is Consumer Reports. That's right. The library gives you full access to the consumerreports.org website, including product ratings, recommendations, and buying guides. You'll find Consumer Reports at joco.library.org/research/consumer-reports.
I think sometimes people are reading a romance novel and they don't even realize it.
Joco Library Uncovered.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, so today's another collection deep dive, and did you know that today's topic is probably the most popular fiction genre there is?
Is that right?
Yep. It's true. According to a study I saw on WordsRated, which is a research group that focuses on the book industry, romance novels sold 39 million volumes last year, bringing in $1.44 billion in sales.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Charles? I'd like to turn things around if I could.
Okay.
I would like to question the questioner.
Okay.
Yeah, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? You don't have an answer, do you?
No, I don't have an answer for that.
Well, maybe you can riddle me this. That's from Tina Turner. And, she asks, who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? Can you answer that?
I can't, no. But I would assume most people need hearts. It's a good part of your circulatory system.
Yes, but we're talking about the romantic heart.
That's true.
That, it's the first time that you watch a health video and you find out the heart's not shaped like a candy box. Kind of disappointing.
Not? No? Okay.
Well, that's why you tune in to the
Learn something new every day.
Joco Undercover podcast.
Well, it's probably not really news to most of our listeners out there.
Okay. And
it's also probably not news that the romance is so popular, with it being so popular within our readers. There are best-selling romance authors like Colleen Hoover. Her books became really popular on TikTok last year. And then we're doing a better job now of keeping up with demand. But when it launched in October of 2022, her book, It Starts With Us, had already seen almost 900 people place it on the holds list through the library. So it is a popular genre.
Yeah.
So that all left me wondering, as we were preparing for this episode, why are people so into this genre? Why are people so passionate about it? And for those who may not have picked up a romance novel, where would you start if you're wanting to get into these authors? So I think that's a good segue into...
Yeah, if we could only bring in some experts.
Yeah, into our experts here. Gregg is going to be back on this episode. Yeah, and he's brought some friends with him who might be able to answer those questions. So stick around, and we'll be right back after this quick break.
Library News.
Gregg.
Charles.
How's it going?
It is doing great. Thank you so much for having us back for another edition of the Collection Deep Dives for the Uncovered podcast.
We always love to have you here.
Absolutely. And today I am doubly excited because we are going to be discussing one of my most favorite topics in genres, which is romance novels. Now, Charles, you may not know this, but romance novels, it's a genre that has a lot of presumptions and kind of baggage associated with it. But if you are a regular library goer, you know that that romance is a genre that is not only immensely popular with our patrons, but it is a genre that really drives the publishing industry. Its fans and its readers are just wonderfully voracious. They always come back for more, and we here at the library are excited to talk about romance and, above all, talk about some great books that everyone gets to read. But before we get into it, I definitely want to make sure to introduce our panelists today. So go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jess. I'm over at Leewood if you want to come by and talk romance.
Hi, I'm Kelly Downs, and I'm currently at Central, and I also love to talk about romance, and it's one of my favorite genres, and my favorite part of romance novels are enemies to lovers.
So you said enemies to lovers. Now, romance is a genre that has a lot of kind of tropes associated with it. Now, these are not like subgenres like you'd see in like thrillers or mysteries or horror, but tropes. Can you explain what those are, or maybe give us some examples of a trope in romance?
Sure, absolutely. So a trope is definitely a popular part of the romance genre, and there's lots of different tropes, probably up to 40. But the main ones that really people like to talk about are the enemies to lovers. There's also friends to lovers, forced proximity, fake relationships, and we could go on and on. There's a lot.
So these are like patterns or kind of situations in the novel that kind of they follow a certain path.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jess, what are some of your favorite tropes?
Oh, yeah. So the enemies to lovers kind of thing, kind of going into the opposites attract dynamic. I really do enjoy second chances as far as, people finding connection where a missed opportunity might have happened before. Oh, goodness. All sorts of
loves.
First loves, yeah.
Fell in love into teenagers, and then you find each other again when you're 29.
I was thinking of, all those Hallmark movies where it's a small town romance where they come back to the small town and fall in love with, somebody there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So also additionally to the tropes, we also have the spice level. Can you talk about kind of how the intensity of romance can kind of differ over all these different types of genres?
Sure. And I think that's a hot topic too, because people really, everyone has a different comfort level. And so you're going to find romance that are innocent, and maybe a kiss happens within the book, but that's about it. All the way to there's a few intimate scenes between the characters, maybe just kissing, or the implication, like they're implying that something's going to happen. It's considered closed door. And then it can go even steamier, and where they actually describe the intimate scene all the way up to what I would consider to be like explicit, where it's very detailed and they don't leave anything to the imagination.
So, Jess, it is kind of relative talking about the different spice levels. So some people's comfort level is going to be in different categories.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of arrive at the discussion of romance like it's a pizza. So that you'll generally assemble a story or a pizza in the same way, but the ingredients might differ based off of your personal taste or mood. So your setting, your character, your plot, your tropes, the spice, all of those different ingredients may be added in a different combination to form your favorite flavors. And I just, believe that all tastes are valid, even if it's not something that you would personally pick off of the menu.
So we have so many different books that we want to talk about, but let's go ahead and kick things off. If our listeners are either lapsed romance readers or have never read a romance novel, what would be a good gateway read? What would be a good first attempt to kind of get you into the genre? Jess, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
So, yeah, I was not a romance reader for most of my life, but I am now. And one of the main books that got me started was The Kiss Quotient by Han Huang.
That's an amazing one.
It is incredible. The story is so well written. All of the characters are believable. The tension and conflict is wholly, just all of it is a very, very satisfying, believable story. So to kind of go in a quick quick summary of that, Stella is wildly successful in her career and happy with her life, but her mother is insisting that it's time for her to settle down and start a family. But Stella thinks that dating is messy and just physical intimacy of any kind is uncomfortable. But so her solution to this scenario is to hire an escort to teach her about sex and relationships so that she can be ready for whenever Mr. Right comes around.
Sure.
So Michael has dreams and goals of his own, but none of those included falling for his client. And so with the family commitments and insecurities and feelings a lot like love start complicating matters, the question arises, can two very different people make the perfect equation?
So this fake relationship or kind of arranged relationship kind of morphs into something that's a little bit more real and more passionate.
Yes, and the joy and the fun is seeing the evolution of, that's when I knew I loved them. And that's a lot of fun to see in text.
That's a great one. Kelly, why don't you tell us about one of your gateway reads? What is your introductions to the romance genre?
Sure. So I've always loved romance, but during the pandemic, I was really struggling to be able to concentrate or enjoy books. And what I discovered was I needed that predictable, happily ever after, low stress novel to keep me engaged. And that's when I really started reading more romance than I ever had. And one of the books that I read in March of 2020 was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. It's actually one of 3 books in a series, but they can be read standalone. So you don't have to read them all, but they're 3 sisters. So each book takes
focuses on one of the sisters.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Chloe is chronically ill, and that has kind of limited some of her life experiences, and she thinks her life is rather boring, and so she makes a list of things she needs to do to enhance her life, and she's rather innocent, and so her list includes drunken debauchery, empty sex, reckless activities like camping in the wild, and riding a motorbike. And so she ends up meeting a man named Red, and he 100% accepts her she has a chronic illness. And I love that the author talks about that, and it just helps us all to relate and see that, like, no matter, we all have things that we have to deal with every day, and it just puts it into a really sweet story that there's someone out there for everyone.
And you mentioned earlier that happily ever after format. That is extremely important in romance. Right? One of the reasons why people read it is that either it's a happily ever after or happily for now, that the story ends in an upbeat type of way.
Absolutely.
Great. And you mentioned that the Talia Hibbert is part of a series. Why don't you tell us about another series with some other tropes?
Oh, yes. Another series that I absolutely love in romance is by Penny Reed, which her name should be recognizable to many people. And it's called The Winston Brothers. There are 7 books. There are 6 brothers and 1 sister, so 7 siblings. And each book, again, focuses on one of the siblings. It takes place in the Smoky Mountains. It's a small town. Mr. Winston, the dad, is part of a biker gang. So you have like all this baggage that comes with this family, and they kind of have a reputation. And so it's a slow burn. It's funny. It's a medium steam level, I would say. There's some descriptions in there, and it's definitely like the trope would be an enemies to lovers. Mm-hmm. And I highly recommend it because if you love the first one, you have 6 more you get to read. Tell us about another series that really piqued your interest. Sure. I don't know why it is about series, but it's like once I find an author that I love, and there's something about like a family, and you can just follow them through. It entertains me. So the next one is the Bergman Brothers series. It's by Chloe Leese. Only When It's Us is the first one. And I like Chloe as an author because she writes romance novels that reflect her belief that everyone deserves a love story. Her stories pack a punch of heat, heart, and humor, and often feature characters who are neurodivergent like herself, which I find stories way more interesting when everyone's not super perfect and has no flaws. Yes. Romance is a genre that kind of has a little bit of fantasy to it, like a little bit of, everyone's perfect. It kind of wishes are fulfilled, but still, if it's grounded in that realistic way, it really can grab readers and get them going. Mm-hmm. And Jess, going back to you, we've talked a little bit about contemporary romances with Kelly, but can you give us a different shade, a different type of setting for some other picks? Oh, absolutely. And historical romances are a wide berth of options. Immensely popular. Yes. I mean, you remember when Bridgerton came out. Well, of course, we all did. Yes. Everybody was watching it. We couldn't keep the books on the shelves, even though it had been, those adaptations are just like, everybody wants to eat them up. It's fantastic. So I also really enjoy not just contemporary, but historical reads, and some of the ones that I enjoy. So if you're looking back at that Regency time period, like Bridgerton, one of the ones that I really love is by Alexis Hall. It's called Lady for a Duke.
It's a swoony and heartfelt Regency-era novel about Viola Carroll, who reconnects with her childhood best friend, the now Duke of Gracewood. She survived the Battle of Waterloo, where by all accounts she was assumed dead. Now, finally living her most authentic life, she is devastated to see how much war has taken from him. She remembers the lively boy from her youth and commits to helping him heal. It's a remarkably affirming novel, full of affection, slowly smoldering into a satisfying conclusion.
This is a really wonderful slow burn. How about the spice level for this one?
It starts off slow. You've got that, oh no, they looked at me, to the, we brushed hands a la 2005 Pride and Prejudice.
Sure.
And then you have all of that pining that it leads up into a welcoming and on-page union of souls, as it were.
That's another key to romance novels, it's not necessarily the destination, but the journey. It's the glances, the brushings of the hands, the will they, won't they, obstacles in the way.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
really build that anticipation to really get the juices flowing.
Yes, the anticipation, the tension, all of that is what drives the novel. And so it's almost less about, oh, good, they ended up together. We want that. But it's all about getting through the conflicts to knowing that it's a very stable and satisfying resolution.
And even though Regency is an extremely popular brand of historical romance, why don't you give us an example of another time period that might be of interest to us?
Okay, yeah. So Slippery Creatures by K.J. Charles is a historical, around the Roaring Twenties kind of era. Mm-hmm. So Slippery Creatures is actually the first book in a trilogy. Now, this one is unique in the sense that a lot of romances have the stories are self-contained in a single book. There may be a series exploring other characters within the first novel, such as the Brothers series. But this one is part of the Will Darling adventures, and so it's actually the whole of the story takes place over 3 novels, and Slippery Creatures is just the first one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Private Will Darling has returned from the Great War and inherits a bookshop after his uncle dies. Will's planned for a quiet life until he finds himself in possession of valuable information that both the War Office and a criminal ring are desperate to get their hands on. He meets an aristocratic gentleman, Ken Sickerton, who is as attractive as he is irritatingly clever, and who offers to help Will get out of the mess. Passion, danger, and intrigue fill the pages of this cusp of the Roaring Twenties trilogy. It's got banter for days, mysteries to solve, and it's been a long time since I've wanted to reread a book, much less an entire series, as soon as I finished it.
And all of the events of these 3 books kind of lead to that big conclusion. They're setting the table for that big reveal.
Sometimes, Greg, the issues that they need to navigate before they can be truly happy, it takes longer than just a single book. So it takes its time, and it's totally worth it.
And if you're having adventures and solving mysteries along the way,
they get in the way. You gotta deal with what comes at you first.
So much the better. Kelly, going back to you, we've talked a lot about novels and tropes that kind of deal with kind of a lot of firsts and a lot of intense feelings. Tell us a little bit about a book that's set maybe kind of in the mid, maybe a little after that first blush of romance.
So a book that I would love to talk about today is called Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. It is a romance with characters in their 40s. It's a very light read, has a lot of character growth, and the trope would be a forced proximity, and the steam level is 0. It implies that they have a romantic relationship, but they don't describe it. So it's about Nora Hamilton. She knows the formula for love better than anyone. As a romance channel screenwriter, it's her job. But when her too-good-to-work husband leaves her and their 2 kids, Nora turns her marriage's collapse into cash and writes the best script of her life. No one is more surprised than her when it's picked up for the big screen. When former sexiest man alive, Leo Vance, is cast as her never-do-well husband, Nora's life will never be the same.
So it's like a kind of a celebrity pairing with kind of like a regular person. And
and a second chance. Mm-hmm. So that's always nice. And I like that. It's so interesting to me that we're sitting here and we've talked about around 6 books, and they're all so different from each other. So it really does show that romance can be for everyone.
Absolutely. We could probably talk another hour about different types of genres and tropes and time periods and all these different types of things. This genre is vast and contains multitudes.
I think sometimes people are reading a romance novel and they don't even realize it.
Exactly. And so Jess, why don't you tell us, kind of sticking with that kind of the midlife kind of genre, mini genre, can you give us another example of a book that fits in that mold?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind is called 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. It's a contemporary second chance romance that has a lot of heart and a lot of healing that needs to happen over the course of it. It's got single parent in there. We've got a character there who has debilitating migraines, so it addresses some real life things that you wouldn't consider being a romance heroine of a kind. You kind of expect them to be this kind of paper doll perfect thing. These are real people, and they feel like real people. So in 7 Days in June, single mother Eva is an extremely successful writer who unexpectedly meets Shane at an author event, and everyone in attendance can see that there is immediate chemistry between them. 7 Days in June recounts the week they spent together as teens, falling in love and being ripped apart by circumstance, and intersperses how they navigate this bittersweet reunion as adults who are still head over heels for each other. This is a hurts so good kind of book where the happily ever after payoff is absolutely earned. You're going to laugh, you're going to cry, and this book is going to stay with you for years after you read it.
This sounds like a really intense but a really worthwhile romance that really kind of digs its teeth into you. Yeah. I would like to thank both of you so much for joining us here and talking about this amazing genre. I would like to remind all of our listeners that if you didn't have a pen to write down what we talked about, look in the show notes. We will have a BiblioCommons list of all of the books that we talked about today, plus some others that we didn't get a chance to get to. So we will definitely make sure that your to-be-read pile is as nice and full as the fall goes on. I would like to mention that there is a novel that's coming out in November. It is called Do Your Worst by Rosie Dannen. Now, this is going to be a steamy enemies to lovers trope that's set in an ancient castle in modern-day Scotland, where the main character is a logical, no-nonsense Brit archaeologist who is teamed with a young woman who is she's a gift of the supernatural. She's kind of a curse breaker. She's brought in to kind of lift the curse off of this castle, and hilarity ensues as both of them kind of clash, but find sparks and romance along the way. This is kind of a rom-com. This is going to be a fun, gentle read, but definitely with the steam on the higher end. So if that's your thing, check out Do Your Worst by Rosie Dannen. I would like to thank both of you again for this episode. I really enjoyed this conversation.
This was so much fun. Thanks for having us.
About romance.
All right. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Joco Library Uncovered to come.
So I imagine those out there still listening are probably already just as excited as I am to give some of those titles a recommendation. I know, Dave, you seemed like you were into those. Maybe?
I have no heart.
Oh, okay. Well, if you're like Dave and you might still have some lingering doubts about if romance is the genre for you, I have one last bit of encouragement, and that's that this genre is just fun to read. Yeah. Romance, by its nature, is about emotions and getting the reader to feel something, just like the characters are feeling throughout the book. So it's easy to get sucked into the story. Romance novels typically have happy endings despite the challenges along the way. So that's something that if you're looking for more of an uplifting type of experience from your reading, you're going to find that in romance novels. Also, if steaminess of the novel is something that you're worried about, there are tons of online tools. One that I use is romance.io, and that's a crowdsourced review page for romance novels.
Nice.
And they put a steaminess rating.
Steaminess.
That's what they call it.
Well, it makes sense.
Like, is this just fairly chaste romance, or is it more explicit? So
that makes sense.
People want to find one that fits their tastes, and They have sources like that, so you can look up and make sure that the book is right for you before you check it out.
Not everybody's looking for 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
Okay.
And hopefully you can find something from this discussion that inspired you to find a hidden gem at the library that you might not have looked for before. And speaking of those hidden gems, next episode we'll be talking about unsung heroes. So Johnson County was founded in 1855, just a year after the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And over the last 168 years, there have been many figures who are well known and live in the area to this day.
Yeah.
But we wanted to focus on Johnson County natives who made positive contributions to the world, but might not be those same household names that everybody recognizes.
For sure. And so we're going to have Andrew from the Johnson County Museum, and he has identified, I think, 4 of these individuals, and I cannot wait to hear about their historical impact on Johnson County.
Yeah, me either. So let's tune in next time for that.
Joco Library Uncovered.
So if you enjoyed today's topic, you might be interested in these recommendations from our collection. First, Charles's choices.
Hey, that's you.
That's me. And I typically enjoy some different genres. I like some fantasy in my books. So both of the ones that I'm recommending today may not be traditional romance, but they are in the romance genre. The first one is The Undertaking of Hart and Mercy by Megan Bannen. And this one is kind of a Weird West romance. It's got elements of enemies to lovers. It's got some of those Western vibes from like sheriffs and outlaws and things, but there's also magic and demons, and I just really enjoyed that book. The next one I will recommend is Hot and Badgered by Shelly Laurenston. And this one is a shape-shifting romance between a...
I really thought there were going to be badgers.
There is. There's a... It's a badger and badger shapeshifter and a bear shapeshifter are the two that are falling in love in this one. But I enjoy Shelly Laurenston. The romance is there, but I enjoy it more because of their writing style is very cinematic. It feels like there's a movie going on. So there's like little cutaways to things that are happening in different parts of the city, and it's kind of comedic. And I really enjoy like that comedic action mixed with romance.
Cool.
And next up, we have a Dave's Double Feature.
Okay, for your Dave's Double Feature, I'm an old school guy, and so I'm going to recommend an old school format, the DVD. Back in my day, we're talking about the 1980s, we loved our rom-coms, and what was so special about our rom-coms, they had the best soundtracks ever. And so the first one that I'm going to suggest is a movie that stars Andrew McCarthy, John Cryer, and, of course, Molly Ringwald. And the movie is Pretty in Pink. I don't know which I like better, the movie or the soundtrack. The second one is a little bit more modern, and when I say modern, we're talking about 2000, so 23 years old, but another one of my favorite actors, John Cusack, he had a movie called High Fidelity. Fun fact, it was the introduction to the world for Jack Black. It was his theatrical debut. It takes place in a record store, but there is a serious love element to it, and highly recommend both the movie and the soundtrack. So my picks, Pretty in Pink and High Fidelity.
So for a full list of our book report recommendations, you can go to our webpage, jocolibrary.org/uncovered.
Joco Library Uncovered is a production of Johnson County Library and is recorded at the Central Resource Library in Overland Park, Kansas. We would love to read your thoughtful emails at uncovered@jocolibrary.org. Join our online conversation at facebook.com/Joco Library. Look for us on Twitter at Joco Library. Our website is jocolibrary.org. Subscribe to Joco Library Uncovered through your favorite podcatcher or go to jocolibrary.podbean.com. Thanks for listening, and come back in 2 weeks for more Joco Library Uncovered.